Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, to TV Courtroom. I'm honored to be here today because this is, and I know I say this all the time, I come on TV Courtroom, I say, this is the most important show that you'll ever see here, the most important episode on TV Courtroom. I know I always say that. But this time, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I really mean it. Why? And this is no hyperbole, what I'm about to say. America right now is where Germany was shortly before Hitler. America right now is where Spain was shortly before Francisco Franco. America right now is where Italy was before Benito Mussolini. And that's no hyperbole. That's real stuff. But we can't bury our head in the sand and say, woe is me, woe is us. We have to fight back. Brother Malcolm gave us the solution. You see over my right shoulder, Brother Malcolm told us many profound things. But one of the most profound for me is Black folks will get change by the ballot or the bullet. The ballot or the bullet. And nobody is seriously, no Black person, no intelligent Black person is seriously talking about the bullet right now. So if we realize that we need change, if we realize that change has to take place, and it's not the bullet part of Malcolm's ballot or the bullet, well, the only option is the ballot. And I encourage people, I'm talking to all folks, I'm talking about freedom-loving conservatives, freedom-loving liberals, freedom-loving progressives, freedom-loving revolutionaries. Everybody who loves freedom and democracy must realize that right now we're at the brink. If you were able to go back in time and talk to the people in Germany shortly before Hitler, they would have told you they never saw it coming. Talk to the people in Italy shortly before Benito Mussolini. They would have told you they never saw it coming. Talk to the people in Spain before Francisco Franco. They would have told you they never saw it coming. But if you're a student of history like I am, we can look back at what they missed and we not miss it. And when I say we're on the brink, I'm talking about brink of fascism, a dictatorial government. I never use the guy's name, so I'm just going to call him Dump, and you know what I'm talking about. President Dump, before he was elected the second time, he was interviewed, and he was asked about the accusations of him being a dictator, him being a fascist. And reporters said to him, that's not true. And he said, well, I'll only be a dictator on day one. And that's what he said. And then once he got in, elected November 5, sworn in January 20, and his executive orders are unlike any in American history. He has taken upon himself the role of not just the executive branch, but the legislative branch and the judicial branch. If that's not dictatorial, nothing is. You might say, well, okay, Michael, what's the solution? Very quickly, I'm going to tell you the solution very, very quickly before I get there. Let me spend a minute telling you what I went through. Shortly after the November 5 election, despite me being this, what I think, strong, courageous, brave Black man / progressive / revolutionary who fight to the death, I was really shook and depressed on the night of November 5 and then the morning of November 6, because I saw what happened. And I actually stayed in bed for a couple of days saying it's over, we lost. And then my enslaved ancestors grabbed me by the scruff of my neck. My sharecropping ancestors grabbed me by the back of the neck. My Jim Crow civil rights protesters, elders and ancestors grabbed me by the neck and said, what the hell is your problem? We went through hell to get you where you are. And now you lose one election, yeah, serious election, but you're going to stay in bed and cover your head and cry. You better get your ass out of that bed and get up and fight. And that's what I'm doing. I'm back in the fight, and we all must be in the fight. Otherwise, 50 years from now, people are going to look back at America the way now we look back at Germany, the way we look back at Spain, the way we look back at Italy. And we don't want to do that. So that's the problem. You might say, well, what's the solution? Well, there are two women lawyers who are running for judge. There's Deborah Watson Stokes, Esquire. There's Ghee, Esquire. Really thoroughly experienced attorneys who will be two of the best judges Philadelphia has ever had. Because when we talk about judges, that's one of the frontline soldiers that will protect us from tyranny, whether it's on the city level, the state level, or the federal level. Right now, I'm talking about the city level, the city and county of Philadelphia. And from my standpoint, we need these judges not to be activist judges, not to agree with me as a progressive and a revolutionary, not to say exactly what I say, but uphold the ideals and the principles of the United States Constitution and of what the Declaration of Independence stands for. Now, I know about slavery. Nobody knows more about slavery than I do as a student of history in regard to what happened in 1776 to Black folks, what happened in 1789 and 1791 with the US Constitution, the amendments. I know about all that. I'm not talking about what racists did with the Constitution. I'm talking about what the Constitution says. And we need lawyers who are running for judges, judicial positions. We need judges to uphold the principles and the ideals of all men, women, and others are created equal. And if they're all created equal, they got to be treated equal. I don't care what your color is, your gender is, your sexual preference is, your language is, your religion is. We need judges to do the right thing. And that's why I'm honored in the next couple of minutes to have one of our first two guests to talk about who she is and what her campaign is all about and how not only Philadelphia will be better once she's elected, not only how Pennsylvania will be better once she's elected, but how America will be better. And again, I want to be clear. These attorneys who are running to become judges, they and I don't see eye to eye on every issue. I mean, if it were up to me, the whole legal system would be trashed. But I understand that that's not a reality. We have to play the hand we're dealt. And the hand that we were dealt is the American legal system. So even though I, as a Black lawyer, I always tell people that I am not a lawyer who just happens to be a Black man. Instead, I'm a Black man who just happens to be a lawyer, because the law to me is secondary. You may say, well, how's the lawyer saying that? And if the law is secondary, what's primary? Well, justice is primary. Equity is primary. The law is secondary. Why? Because slavery was legal. Women not being able to vote was legal. Child labor was legal. And I'm not just talking about in America. You had, for example, very recent history of South Africa. Apartheid was legal. What Hitler did to the Jews in Germany was legal. So don't talk to me just about the law. Talk to me about what the law is and should be really about at its core. And if there's nothing else, the law must be about justice. The law must be about equity. And that's why it's so important to have people like Deborah Watson Stokes and Ghee running to become judge. And before we get to our first guest in about 1 minute, Deborah Watson Stokes, let me tell you why judges are so important and why this upcoming May 20 primary election is so important. Judges have incredible, awesome power. Judges have more power than a mayor. Judges have more power than a governor. Judges have more power than the president of the United States. You may say, well, how can a judge have more power than the mayor, than the governor, and the president? Well, let me tell you 4 things that judges can do, but mayors and governors and presidents can't do. Judges can take away your property by imposing a fine. Judges can take away your liberty by throwing you in jail. Judges can take away your children through a custody order. And judges can take away your life through the death penalty. Those are some awesome powers. And we need to make sure, as Lord Acton said, that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we want to make sure that we get the right people in office as judge and that they do the right thing. And speaking of doing the right thing, that brings me to my first guest today. And it's perfect timing and it's the perfect segue. I just talked about doing the right thing. And when it comes to lawyers doing the right thing, nobody does it better than Deborah Watson Stokes. How are you today?
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing very well. And when I say it's an honor to have you, I do mean that. I'm pretty much going to turn the show over to you. And when I have folks who are running for office, regardless of what office it is, I always allow them to talk about themselves so I don't miss anything. But before you do that, Deborah, I got to tell people about the Deborah that I know. And the Deborah that I know is one of the, if not the fairest homicide prosecutor that I've ever had the pleasure of going up against. All I want from a prosecutor is a fair trial for my client. I'm trying to win, the prosecutor's trying to win, but we both have to make sure we do the right thing in winning. No cheating, no double dealing, no backstabbing, just playing your cards fair. And I got to tell you, I really didn't realize that. And as I did some research about you, I figured I didn't need to because I know you, but 150 plus juries and mostly homicide and 17 years at least in the homicide unit and awards from the barristers and the Philadelphia Coalition of Victim Advocacy. But the key thing for me, I'm going to turn over to you in a second, Deborah, is that every assistant DA, especially the Black ones, especially the Black women, they look at you as a kind of auntie. And that's so important because they see you as this great prosecutor, but someone who's approachable and accessible and telling them what they need to know. Having said that, I'd like you to fill in the blanks. Tell us a little bit about your background that I did not mention.
Okay. Well, you talked about my legal background, but I'm going to tell you how I got here. When I was 5 years old, my oldest brother was killed with a gun in
I never knew that.
Yeah. And so what happened, I'm 5 and he's 17. So my mother cried all the time because she had lost her oldest son. And so I say, God places you where you're supposed to be. Because when I was a little kid, the only thing I could do for my mother was give her a tissue. But, when I grew up, I became a homicide DA, and I was able to give mothers like my own, grieving mothers
Mm,
who lost sons and daughters to gun violence, a little bit more than a tissue,
mm,
them a
mm.
form of justice. And let's be clear, there are no winners in homicide cases.
Great point.
So,
Explain that.
yeah, someone has lost a son who's never coming back or a daughter, right? And someone else, and mostly mothers, and the
Mm,
mother on the other side, her son is going to be, incarcerated or justice impacted for a very long time. So there are no winners. So as
mm,
a Black woman, it was just important to me to make sure that the courtroom and the cases that I prosecuted were full of justice, fairness, treating
yes.
everybody fair on both sides, equity, you know, uh, mothers, uh, and making sure not to violate anyone's civil rights or uh, doing what I can to prevent it. And so that's me as an assistant DA. But some other things people don't know about me is that behind the scenes, I participated in exonerations. either with attorney.
Explain what that is for folks who are not lawyers. What's an exoneration?
Exoneration it has many different forms. It's when a person did not actually commit, the crime that they were convicted of. So it could be there are four different levels. It could be the law changed. It could be with juvenile lifers, and I participated in the juvenile lifer program and helped people return back home, returning citizens, return back home for things that they had done as a child because their brains weren't developed. So that's one way. The second way could be either police who lied or withheld evidence. So that's police misconduct. And then there's prosecutorial misconduct where the DA is doing something inappropriate. And then the fourth category is, innocence. They didn't do it. So one thing I was able to do in my capacity as a DA was participate in those kinds of exonerations, either before the charges before people were actually prosecuted, getting to the bottom of who actually did it, or afterwards, looking at the evidence and saying, hey, look, now years later, we know this person didn't do it. So that's important. I was a juvenile defense attorney for a period of time, and the people that I helped, they grew up to be leaders in our community. I'm super proud of that. I also worked on the House Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Constitutional Law. So I have a little bit of a different background. I'm also a former math teacher.
Wow. I got to tell you, I'm so glad I have you on the show because I was always impressed with you. And I didn't even know half the stuff that you're telling me now. So I'm even more impressed. Deb, before I go to the next question, let the public know, people who might think a prosecutor, especially a homicide prosecutor, just wants to put everybody in jail for life. What's your response to that?
No, absolutely not. Okay. Prosecution is part of the job. The system doesn't work unless everyone, and this is really important, people of color, Black people need to be everywhere. There shouldn't be a position where they're not people of color, right? So people say, well, how could you be a Black prosecutor? And I say, you have no idea how many sentences, I help people avoid,
Yes.
and how many years we were able to cut off of people's sentences. So it's really important to have people people of color in those spaces. When the decisions are being made to charge, to not charge, right? When, people's rights are violated internally, you're like, no, the cop did this or that. So it's very important to have Black people everywhere. And, I thank you for mentioning that, to try a fair case. People just want to be treated fairly, right? They don't want you to withhold evidence. They don't want you to lie, cheat, or steal. These are our sons. You know what I mean? I'm born and raised in Detroit, but I live in West Philadelphia. I'm married a West Philadelphia man. We still live in the family house of his grandparents, So it is important. If you can't get a fair shake from me as an African American woman, you couldn't get a fair shake from anybody. So I think that it was just super important for me to be in the space, but be in the space knowing that I had a responsibility to my community. And what people don't know about me is that I have members of my own family that were justice impacted. My husband is on death row for murder. My the same family, they were sentenced for dealing drugs, robbery and overdosing, and we all sit at the same dinner table, and so I think that is, important. because you see the whole person. And that's the kind of judge I want to be. Someone that sees the whole person. Someone that is fair to people of color. Someone that is
Mm,
fair to people who don't have money. A lot of times people just want to be seen in the courtroom. They just want to be heard. They don't want to be discriminated against. They want a
mm.
fair shot. You know, and that's what I'm going to bring. You know, I
And you
just
know, it's
yeah.
so funny as I'm listening to you. I know that people watching this saying, "Hey, I got to remember this woman's name, this Deborah Watson Stokes, because not only is she a great lawyer, but she reminds me of my aunt. She's just so approachable and so accessible, and it's just amazing." Let me get through my list of questions. You pretty much covered much of it. I was going to ask you about why you're qualified. We talked about that. Let me ask you, because there are many other people running to become judge. Um,
Yes.
if a voter says to you, "Hey, Deborah Watson Stokes, I heard you on this TV courtroom show. You're quite impressive, but there are other impressive candidates. What sets you apart?"
Well, I like to say I'm of the community, by the community, and from the community. And I just don't talk about it. Look at where I live. You know, I'm right.
Mm,
Um, and so what sets me apart? My love for my people and my love for my community. So what have I done? Because people always talk about it, but what have I done? I have participated in Know Your Rights forums. You know, where we talked about, well, what do you do when you are stopped by the police? I at Sharon Baptist Church, I started a legal ministry. Excuse me, and that was, and that's free, where people could go and get free legal.
mhm.
You know, I participated in will seminars for our seniors. You know, I've
Yes.
served food. You know, I bought coats. You know, we school supplies. You name it. I'm anything that I can do. To support our community. You know, I'm there. So I'm community oriented, and I'm gonna stay community oriented. I'm not gonna leave. I'm gonna be right here doing whatever I can. To support our community.
I got to tell you, Deb, as I'm listening to your responses, instead of me asking you what have you done for the community, I should have asked you what you haven't done, because it seems to me you've pretty much done everything. For those who are tuning in, we're speaking with Deborah Watson Stokes, an attorney who's running to become a judge at the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. My next question, Deb, you touched on it already, but let me expound upon it a little bit more. What will you do as a judge to guarantee justice and guarantee equity for the people who have been treated in a most oppressive manner here in America? We lawyers call them protected classes. So, what will you do to make sure their rights are protected now as they were not in the past?
Yes. I understand that, first of all, that is my responsibility. You know, my pronouns are she and her. I want to make sure that, I meet people where they are. And the most important thing I'm going to do is I'm going to listen. Do you know how many times, a lot of times, people don't listen? I'm not going to allow people to be disrespected in my courtroom.
Mhm.
I'm going to treat everyone with dignity, and respect. So a lot of times, uh, people go into a situation like in court expecting something bad to happen, right?
Yes,
You know,
yes.
and in my courtroom, I want people to say, you know what? I've heard about her, and I know she's going to be fair. She's going to listen to what I have to say. She's going to give me a fair shot. And she's going to know the law. And and I am an auntie, so I'm going to bring that same flavor to the bench.
I love the way you framed that. I think that's the perfect response. And it's just so cool that this interview we're having, because it's so cool to me. Instead of me calling you Madam Deborah Watson Stokes Esquire, I'm calling you Deb, because it's just so smooth and so fluid and conversational. And I think that's what people are going to love most about you. On top of that, you are knowledgeable in your field. So you got the form, you got the substance. Unfortunately, Deb, we don't have a whole bunch of time here. We got about 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes left. So this show is called the TV Courtroom Show, and you know better than almost anybody with 150 jury trials, at the end of the proceeding, there's a chance for a closing argument. So I'm going to turn it over to you for the next 3-4 minutes. What is it that voters should know as they cast their ballot? What should they know about Deborah Watson Stokes, AKA Auntie?
All right. What you should know, one is that I'm qualified. Not only am I qualified, I am the most qualified judicial candidate in this whole race. You know, I am a mother. I'm married. I have 3 children. I'm union born and union bred. You know, I'm of the community, by the community, and for the community. You know, I'm a great listener. You know, and I love my people. I'm here for everybody. I'm going to be everybody's judge. You know, I don't care if you are justice impacted, you know, or I don't care. I'm going to be everybody's judge. I'm here for justice, equity, and to protect your civil rights.
I got to tell you, usually when I have guests on, Deb, and I give them the closing argument, they go on and on and on. I'm like, it's almost like I'm a member of the jury. Like, will this lawyer please shut up? But for you, Deb, I gave you 3 to 4 minutes, and in less than 3 minutes, you gave one of the most concise answers I've ever heard when I give lawyers. You know, lawyers love to talk, me included, but you got right to the point. Over my right shoulders, Malcolm X used to always talk about making it plain. That's exactly what you did. Deb, before we go, if folks want to support you, if they want to find out more about you, is there a website? Is there a social media page? Is there a phone number? How do they get more information?
Yes, all of the above. You know, I'm at Deb Watson Stokes for Judge.com. It's the same for social media. Deb Watson Stokes for Judge.com. I just want to say really briefly, if you all don't vote for me, I won't be there. Okay? So I need you guys. Black judges matter. Black women judges matter. We're the first line of defense, and I'm here for you.
I got to tell you, usually when people are running for office, they sound like they're selling something. You don't sound like you're selling something. You're just talking to the people. And we are absolutely honored to have you, Deb. Before you go, in case anybody missed it, what's that website? How can people find out more in our final 10 seconds? Please repeat it.
Yes, Deb Watson Stokes for Judge.com.
I got to tell you, the next time I see you after the primary and after the general, I want to be calling you the Honorable Deborah Watson Stokes. And if people are listening like I was listening, it's no doubt about it, we'll be calling you the Honorable. You're already honorable, but we'll give you that official title after the election. When I normally, Deb, before we go, when I talk to people, I always say, hey, it was nice talking to you, because that's a polite thing to say. But to you, I mean it. It was really nice talking. It's almost, Deb, like you and I were just having a conversation and somebody happened to record it. It was that fluid and that natural and that honest. Very well done. Have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, thank you. I love you, Michael.
Great stuff. And the feeling is mutual. I love you too. Deborah Watson Stokes. Remember that name on and before May 30. Let me say this, because we have another candidate coming up in just about 2 minutes. What I want to say is this. There are a lot of folks running for a lot of different offices in the May 20 primary election. And I wrote an article in the Philadelphia Tribune. It will be available online tonight. So if you want to go to phillytrib.com, and see my endorsements for all of the different positions that are on the ballot for May 20. And I want to thank our engineer, our producer, Roland, because he put that up. Just go to phillytrib.com. I'd say around 6 p.m. tonight, it'll be online. It's actually in the Sunday Tribune. So it'll be online tonight. It'll be online tomorrow, Saturday, and you can pick it up late Saturday or anytime on Sunday. It includes all the candidates running for office and which office they're running for. And it certainly includes Deborah Watson Stokes, who I am endorsing. Before we get to our guest in about a minute, let me just say this. When you read that article, it'll explain the importance of each of these positions. And it's not just people running to become a judge in the Court of Common Pleas, as Deborah Watson Stokes is, but also municipal court. In addition, Commonwealth Court. In addition, Superior Court. But it's not just judicial positions. There's also the DA's office, the city controller. In addition, there are 3 ballot questions. So if you want my take on all of this, please get a copy of the Philadelphia Tribune. Go to phillytrib.com tonight, beginning, say, about 6 p.m., and you'll see the article. And believe me, you'll be enlightened. Also, if you want to get it from me directly, what you need to do is to email me, michaelcordx@gmail.com. That's michaelcordx@gmail.com. And say, yo, Mike, I heard you on this TV Courtroom show. I heard about this Tribune article. Please email me a copy, and I'll certainly do that, because that's the right thing to do. Speaking of the right thing to do, it includes bringing to the TV Courtroom audience people who are doing the right thing for the community. And when I talk about people doing the right thing for the community, included in that list, and it's a very small list, is our next guest, Ghee. And I want you, if you're not familiar with Ghee, to know about her. She's an award-winning attorney, a Barrister's Award and the Philadelphia Tribune Award, and she served as the executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. She worked in community organizations, nonprofit organizations. She's always done the right thing. Without further ado, I introduce to the TV Courtroom audience, Ghee Esquire. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, with your listeners. I admire your work, and I'm just happy to be here.
Well, this is the Mutual Admiration Society, because I'm happy to have you here because of your work. I kind of touched on a little bit about you, but before we get into our questions, Ghee, tell the listening audience and the viewing audience about you.
Sure.
Why do they need to know what they need to know? So we want to talk a little bit about your bio, then we get into the questions.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas, as you know, to make sure that all Philadelphians have equal access to justice. I'm doing that because that's who I am and what my career has been about. It's always been about the people. My journey to this point in life started well before I became an attorney. I think it started as a little child growing up in West Oak Lane, where kids who look like me didn't always have the same opportunities as other kids. I grew up during the height of the crack epidemic. And for me, justice and equity was not something that was always evident in my community. And so I went to college. I graduated from a historically Black college in North Carolina.
Let me say this before you go in, Ghee. I always liked you since I met you, but I never knew you were an HBCU grad. I like you even more, so please continue.
Yes, yes, yes. A small school in North Carolina, and came back up to Philadelphia, got my master's degree in public health. And I began working in the community in the year 2000, when I coincidentally had my oldest son, after I got my master's degree. So I worked in programs like Head Start and Early Head Start, fighting for low income children and families to make sure that they had access to high quality education and social services and healthcare, parenting programs. And it was there that I saw firsthand how the law, when it is applied correctly, it can truly uplift communities. And we know that communities need the law. But when it's misapplied, it can unfortunately have a devastating impact on communities. And unfortunately, that oftentimes impacts communities that look like me, look like you, look like Philadelphians. And so that's part of what drove me to become a lawyer. I became a lawyer so I could make a bigger difference in my community. And, I started my career with the city solicitor's office. I've been practicing law over 10 years. I've done everything from mental health commitments, um, on behalf of the city to working in labor and employment. I represented the city of Philadelphia in hundreds of cases, at first as an assistant city solicitor, then as a deputy city solicitor. And I like to say that I fought for workers' rights from the inside out. Truth be told, I had lots of cases that involved criminal aspects. It's funny, one of my running mates and I were just talking, and we both represented a client in different capacities. I was on the civil side of the same issue, and she was on the criminal side. And so I've had a broad spectrum of a body of work. And then for the last 4 years, I was the executive director of the city's Commission on Human Relations, and that's the official civil rights agency for the city of Philadelphia. So I led that along with the Fair Housing Commission, being an advocate, a key advocate in the city's fight against rather discrimination, and in their quest to ensure housing equity for everyone, for our seniors, our veterans, our low income folks, and to build strong communities. And so that's who I am. And that's what I've been about. And that's what my career has been about.
You know, many people who run for different offices, they always talk about what they're going to do. I got this saying that when I'm talking to a candidate, I always say to them, don't tell me what you're going to do. Show me what you've already done. And I got to tell you, kid, you broke it down and showed us some great work. And I love the fact that as you began, you talked about justice and you talked about equity. And I'm going to steal one of your phrases where you talked about the law being applied correctly, because law is like a gun or a knife. It can be used for protection or it can be used to hurt somebody. So when you talk about the law being applied correctly, I'm going to steal that from you, kid, and I'm going to use it on my radio show as if I came up with it. But I love the fact that you framed it that way. I was going to ask you the first question, but you already touched on it. I was going to ask you about your qualifications to become a judge, but based on what you just said, that's clear. But let me ask you this, kid, because there are a lot of candidates who are qualified, but what sets you apart?
Oh, what sets me apart? There are so many things. I think the one thing is I was just watching your program with Deb, and I think we share this in common, that our heart for the community. Um,
Yes.
I truly believe that when you're from Philadelphia, that equips you with certain circumstances that allows you to be compassionate, allows you to live in such a way that you recognize the humanity in others. For me, I have been about the community because I always say, like, when I'm out speaking to people, I say that I'm running for people, not power. But I don't often get into why. The why is because I am the people. I've had
Mm.
some of the same experiences that we've had, that others have had in our community, including, growing up without having all the resources that some of my counterparts may have had. I didn't just go to law school here and, decide that I wanted to live in Philadelphia. I've been here in Philadelphia. I've experienced having family members that are dealing with, I'm sorry, that are dealing with.
No problem. Keep it moving. Let me tell you this before you go on. Let
Um,
me say this before you go on. When I do my TV show and when I do my radio show, I have two little dogs, Rhythm and Blues. And at the most inopportune time, they decide they want to bark and yell and jump over me.
yeah,
So believe me, that bell is not a problem. Plus, I just like the fact that you didn't panic. You just so composed, like, hey, just keep it moving. And I think, I don't know, Key, you might have scripted that to make us believe that you're as smooth as you are, but that
I did not, and I'm hoping that they just go away because
was
I was like waiting for a delivery, and then I said, of course, they would wait until now to deliver. But so we're going to try and see. My composure is from having 3 children, and
and I got to tell you, I never thought that that would be a factor worthy of consideration, but your composure and just keeping it together so smoothly. I know you didn't script it, but I'm just impressed with how smooth you are. So please continue. You don't know, but you got some extra points for that. Please
oh
continue.
my gosh, oh my goodness. So as I was saying, I've had those experiences where you're dealing with family members who are struggling with addiction. You're having family members that are going in and out of the criminal justice system. I've been a victim of crime. I was a victim of crime here in Philadelphia at the age of 12. I've experienced housing insecurity as a single mom. I've experienced, not having enough and having to, navigate life while you're dealing with incredible difficulties. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm 7 years
Whoa.
out from cancer. So, those are the things that kind of keep me grounded when I encounter people. It doesn't matter what side of the V I'm on. I'm always going to be someone who recognizes the humanity in people, because we are all sinners saved by grace, as I believe. And, we're all, we all have the potential of making mistakes. But there's a difference between, a bad day and having a bad life. And everyone is
Mm.
of redemption.
I'm just so impressed. It's like people see you and they know where you are now. And we all assume that you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth and that everything was paid for you, but you struggled like the rest of us. And you've overcome those odds. And I got to tell you, on behalf of myself and the viewing audience, we're really impressed. My next question, Kia, was going to be about what would you do as a judge when dealing with people who are witnesses or parties. I call them the historically oppressed. I call them people who are among a protected class. But when I use the phrase protected class, I figure I got to stop using that and get back in my lane, because that's your lane. As the executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, you know much more about protected class than I ever would. But let me ask you, as a judge, what would you do in connection with these historically oppressed groups and these protected classes?
I think the first thing you have to do is set an environment that's inclusive. Make sure that your staff treat everyone
Mm.
with dignity and respect. Make sure that that's the tone and the culture in your classroom. You have to check your own biases. Just because someone, people are not their circumstances, and just because one person may have this role and the other person may have this history, that doesn't mean that this person is absolutely telling the truth and this person is known to be.
Mm.
So, I think it's important to create an environment where you're recognizing the differences in people, number one, and two, you're educating people about their rights. Um, you're allowing sunlight, transparency. When you write your opinions, when you issue your ruling, to the extent possible, write an opinion. That way, people know
Mm.
why you came out on the side you came out on. And I think that's very important. I think it also goes a long way for people believing in the system. They want to know that when they come into a courtroom, that you're basing your decision on facts, not just your feelings, right? Because your feelings can be based on sometimes your biases. And if you're not checking those biases, then that could have detrimental outcomes for a lot of people. And unfortunately, those are oftentimes the people that are in those protected categories,
Mm.
those
Mm.
that are already marginalized. If you're not careful, you could be part of the system that adds to the burdens that they're already experiencing.
I got to tell you, I appreciate that, not only because it appeared to me to be the right answer, but it also appeared to be so sincere and genuine. It wasn't scripted. It's what you really meant. Those who just tuned in, who are listening or watching, we're talking to Kia Ghee Esquire, a candidate for the position of the Court of Common Pleas here in Philadelphia. We're running out of time, Kia, but before we wrap this up, I want you to do a couple things. One, I want to give you 3-4 minutes or so for a closing argument. This is, after all, the TV courtroom. And you know, as an experienced trial lawyer, that at the end of a trial, there's an opportunity for a closing argument. But before that, Kia, if folks want more information about you, if folks want to support you, how can they do that?
If you want to support me, you can go to my website and learn more about me, www.kiaghee for judge, the FOR judge.com. You can also go on my social media, my Instagram page, Kia Ghee for the number four, judge, and you'll find out more about me. You'll find out my background, my vision for the judiciary here in Philadelphia. And, as they say, I'm around. So when you
Mhm.
out in the community, come up and talk to me because I love talking with people and letting them know exactly why I'm the right person for the job and why I'll be ready on day one.
Speaking of being the right person for the job, here's the opportunity for your closing argument. What do you want the voter who's watching now, who didn't know much about you before the show, what do you want them to remember about you as they cast their ballot?
Thank you. So what I want the voter to know is that when you elect someone judge, you want someone who is there for the right reasons. You want someone that's going to be in command of the law. You want someone that's going to be honest, have integrity, fairness, and is committed to justice. And you want those not to just be a motto or just be an aspirational goal. You want that to be something that they have already lived. And my lived experiences show you that I am qualified. I've been fortunate enough throughout my career to have gotten acclaim for my work. Um, I have been named one of Philadelphia's most influential leaders by the Tribune magazine. I have been named Barrister of the Year by the National Stop the Violence Alliance. I am named one of the top Law 100 for 2 years in a row, and I'm recommended by the Bar Association. So that tells you that I'm qualified. What it doesn't tell you is why I do the work that I do. I do the work that I do for people like my father. My father is someone who is like me. He wanted to be a lawyer. First, my dad is one of the smartest men that I know. He wanted
Mhm.
to be a lawyer. He was born and raised in West Philadelphia, and he went to the Marine Corps, where he then used his GI benefits to go to Temple University, where he met my mother. He and my mother got married, and shortly after college, they had my sister and I. Um, he enrolled in law school, but he was not able to finish because I say my twin sister and I, because I'm a twin.
Mhm.
But he was unable to finish law school because of his responsibility to his growing family. And then, like many people in the 80s and the 90s in our community, and even some struggling now, he found himself battling addiction. And so,
Wow.
because of his addiction, that caused his life to spiral for some bit of time. And like many in addiction, he had done things that he wasn't so proud of, and had some dark moments. And now he's someone who's picked himself up. He's doing well for himself. He's a licensed insurance broker. And unfortunately for him, like many people who have struggled with some issues in their past, when he goes from one employer to the next, he does sometimes still have to worry about sharing parts of his
Yes.
that he's not so proud of. And so it's a hurtful process when you're on the path to redemption. And for me, my father is always a constant reminder that people are not their circumstances. The difference between a good judge and a bad judge is someone that knows the difference between someone that's just having a bad day and a bad person. And so you need someone who knows the difference. But how do they know the difference? They know the difference because of their lived experiences. Justice, in a lot of ways, is common sense. But as my grandmother would say, common sense is not common to everyone, right? Your lived experiences inform your viewpoint, and those viewpoints will inform how you issue your rulings and what decisions you make. As I said, I am the right person for the job here in Philadelphia because I know we have a lot of improvement needed before we can truly make sure that this justice system is equitable for everyone. And I'm running to make sure that everybody in Philadelphia has an equal opportunity at justice, no matter who they are or what their circumstances are. So vote for me. I need you to vote for me. 9 people will be elected, whether you vote for them or not. So you want to make sure that 9 people will be elected for the Court of Common Pleas, I should say.
Mhm.
3 people for the municipal court. So you want to make sure that the people who are elected are those that share your values and your concerns. And so that's why I think I would be the best person for the Court of Common Pleas.
Kia, we gave you 3 to 4 minutes. You got that in 3 minutes, 57 seconds. I don't know if you had a stopwatch in front of you, but it worked perfectly. I got to tell you, after listening to that, I knew some of it. I didn't know most about your background. The fact that you feel comfortable enough to share the personal story about your father, I think that makes it clear to the voters that you're one of them. You're one of us. After listening to that, Kia, I don't know if that was an eloquent closing argument or a passionate church sermon. Either way, it worked out perfectly. And our final 10 seconds, Kia, tell us that website and how people can contact you and support you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you again. You can visit my website, www.kiageeforjudge.com. You can also go on my Instagram, Kiagee, the number 4 judge. And you can always email me as well, kiageeforjudge@gmail.com. And as I said, I'm always out in the community. I would love to hear from you and talk to you face to face and show you why I'm the right person for the job.
I'm speaking it into existence by calling you the Honorable Kia Ghee, Judge of the Court of Common Pleas. I got to tell you, it was great having you. It was similar to the conversation that I had with Deborah Watson Stokes. You come off as sincere and honest and candid. You have what's required in both form and in substance. So you got my vote. And once we're about to wrap it up with you, but I'm going to explain to the audience my article in the Philadelphia Tribune where I endorse people. And you're right there among others at the top of the list because you're qualified. And I did that endorsement before this interview. So maybe you'll let me vote twice for you in May. I don't know. But Kia, thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank you again, Michael. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and I do mean my pleasure. Folks, you heard from Kia Ghee, Esquire, candidate for the Court of Common Pleas right here in Philadelphia. I got about maybe 4 or 5 minutes left, and I want to say a couple things. One, I want to talk a little more about my Tribune article. Before that, if there's anybody out there who's a candidate for any of the positions that are up on the ballot for May 20, not just Court of Common Pleas, not just municipal court, not just Commonwealth Court, not just Superior Court, because there's nobody running in the Supreme Court, but there's also the DA candidates. There's also the city controller. In addition to that, there are 3 ballot questions. So I want people who have candidates that they like, candidates that they support, who they want to have on my show, my TV Courtroom show. Contact me at michaelcordx@gmail.com. That's Michael Cordx, thank you, our producer, our engineer extraordinaire, Roland, put it up there, michaelcordx@gmail.com, and say, hey, I saw what you did with Deborah Watson Stokes, Esquire. I saw what you did with Kia Ghee, Esquire. I saw what you did with Kawi Abdul Rahman about a month ago. I want my candidate. As a candidate, either one, I want that person to be on the show. So email me at michaelcordx@gmail.com and we'll work out an arrangement so that we can make that happen. Having said that, please, folks, you got to get my article in the Philadelphia Tribune. You can buy it from the local stores on Sunday morning, maybe even Saturday night. But the easiest way, the quickest way to get the article is probably as soon as maybe 6 p.m. tonight. Just go to phillytrib.com, type in CORD, COARD, and you might not have to because the article should pop up, but if it doesn't, also just type in endorsements, CORD endorsements, and the article will come up. And it talks about the importance of voting. At the beginning of the show, I explained that Malcolm X said that Black people need a change, and that change comes by the ballot or the bullet. And nobody's talking about the bullet. We're talking about using the ballot in a peaceful, in a nonviolent, in a democratic way. And I'm not just talking about Black people. When I talk to Ghee Esquire, I use the phrase protected class. I use the phrase historically oppressed. So I'm not talking about just Black people. I'm talking about brown people. I'm talking about yellow people. I'm talking about gay people. I'm talking about transgender people. I'm talking about women people. I'm talking about Muslim people. I'm talking about Christian people. I'm talking about Jewish people. I'm talking about everybody who needs a change. I'm really urging them to resist the fascism that is creeping toward the gate, and in many cases has gotten through the gate. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you have to see that what's going on now on the federal level, at least, is a frightening concept. It's the same kind of thing that began to unfold in Germany before Hitler. It's the same thing that began to unfold in Italy before Benito Mussolini. It's the same thing that began to unfold in Spain shortly before Francisco Franco came to power. We don't want to be asleep at the wheel. We want to be alert. We want to be able to tell our children, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren that democracy remained for them in 2035 and 2045 and 2055 and so on and so forth. That democracy remained because just like our enslaved ancestors fought as abolitionists to end slavery, we got to fight. In the same way that our sharecropping ancestors fought against that classist poverty and won, we got to fight. The same way the civil rights workers fought against Jim Crow and won, we got to fight. So we look back at our elders and our ancestors and we ask them, what did you do to make change? And we can see what they did. We want to make sure that if our children, if our grandchildren, if our great grandchildren ask us, what did we do to stop fascism? Well, we did a number of things, including voting. Voting is not the be all and end all, but it's part of the tools in the arsenal. We voted the right way. We voted for people like Deborah Watson Stokes. We voted for people like Ghee, and we voted for all of the people on the endorsement list of yours truly, Attorney Michael X. And very quickly, you might say, well, why should I accept what you think? You're just a voter like any of us. I can make my own decision. Well, read my article in the Tribune. The first couple paragraphs explain why I believe my endorsements carry weight. The first reason is that I don't get anything from it. I don't accept or ask for any gifts, any jobs, any money, anything from candidates or elected officials. I want to stay above the fray. So folks, read that article in the Philadelphia Tribune, go to phillytrib.com, type in cord, type in endorsement, and you'll see all the candidates running and you'll see who I endorse, and make sure you vote for Deborah Watson Stokes and Ghee, amongst others. I'll end today's show like I end every show. It goes like this. Think Black. I'm out.